The Ottoman Empire, a civilization that stretched across 3 continents, left an indelible mark on history known for its grandeur and sophistication. It was also infamous for laws that would leave modern audiences bewildered in this exploration. We will dive into some of the most bizarre Ottoman laws. That may seem shocking by today's standards, but it's important to remember that these laws were not only a reflection of the time, but also a testament to the absolute power wielded by the Sultans. Stick around until the end as we uncover each of these fascinating and at times chilling aspects of one of history's most powerful empires, the Sultan's right to execute. Among the most infamous powers of the Ottoman Sultans was their absolute right to execute anyone perceived as a threat to the throne. This authority was most notably encapsulated in the Canoname, or the law of fratricide, which was formalized during the Ba'ath reign of Sultan Mehmed II, also known as Mehmed the Conqueror. Upon ascending the throne, a sultan could legally order the execution of his brother's nephews or any male relatives who might one day claim the throne. This grim practice was not born out of cruelty but necessity, as dynastic disputes were a constant threat to the empire's stability. Mehmed II's Canoname explicitly justified this law, stating, "For the welfare of the state, it is permissible for the Sultan to execute his brothers." The Ottomans believed that eliminating rivals early on prevented prolonged civil wars and power struggles which could destabilize the empire. Historical records recount that Sultan Selim I, known as Selim the Grim, executed all but one of his brothers upon becoming sultan, and Sultan Ahmed I even executed his nephews. Interestingly, this law didn't just apply to male members of the royal family. The Sultan's authority to execute extended to anyone accused of treason or conspiracy against the throne. Viziers, military leaders, and even favored courtiers were not immune to the Sultan's wrath. Execution often took place in secret within the palace walls, with some records suggesting the use of silk cords to avoid the symbolic shedding of royal blood. However, by the late 17th century, this brutal law began to fall out of favor. Sultan Ahmed I introduced a less bloody alternative, the kaffe system, where potential rivals were confined to the palace rather than executed. While this shift marked a move toward leniency, the legacy of the Canoname serves as a stark reminder of the lengths the Ottomans went to preserve their power. The forbidden colors. In the Ottoman Empire, clothing was not just a matter of fashion, but a reflection of one's social rank. Certain colors, especially purple and gold, were reserved exclusively for the Sultan and his family. These colors symbolized imperial authority, and wearing them without permission was a serious offense. The Tevse Kanalak. Sumptuary laws dictated who could wear what, ensuring strict social order. For example, members of the scholarly ulema class had specific robes, while merchants wore distinct attire. Violating these rules could lead to fines, imprisonment, or public flogging. Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent was particularly strict about enforcing these laws, even intervening personally when individuals flaunted forbidden colors. Green, associated with Islam, was reserved for high-ranking clerics and the Prophet's descendants. Over time, as Western influences emerged, these regulations weakened, especially during Sultan Mahmud II's reforms in the 19th century, but they remain a symbol of the empire's emphasis on hierarchy and control. Punishment for gossiping. Gossip was seen as a dangerous disruption to the stability of the Ottoman Empire in a society where loyalty and unity were paramount. Spreading rumors or speaking ill of others was considered a direct threat to the social fabric. The Ottomans viewed gossip as a form of fitna, a term denoting strife that could destabilize the state. The consequences for gossiping were severe and could range from public flogging to death, depending on the severity of the offense. Those who gossiped about members of the royal family or high-ranking officials faced particularly harsh punishments, such as imprisonment or even execution. Public punishments like flogging were meant to serve as warnings to others, demonstrating the seriousness with which the Ottomans took these offenses. The Ottoman Empire relied on a delicate balance of trust and loyalty within its social structures. gossip could easily undermine this balance, creating suspicion and unrest. Death for tax evasion. In the Ottoman Empire, tax evasion was treated with an unforgiving brutality that demonstrated the absolute power of the state. The empire's vast military and administrative structures depended heavily on the revenue generated by taxes, and any attempt to cheat the system was seen as an act of treason against the Sultan himself. Tax collectors, known as askari, were the enforcers of this ruthless policy, and their authority to extract payments was absolute. The severity of the punishment for tax evasion was extreme. It could lead to the death penalty. Tax evaders, especially those who attempted to deceive the state on a large scale, faced gruesome consequences. This punishment was not merely about financial restitution, but served as a brutal example to others. The harshness of the punishment was not limited to execution alone. For those who were not immediately put to death, the empire would seize their land, property, and possessions, leaving the evader penniless and disgraced. The state believed this public humiliation and financial ruin was necessary to maintain order and discipline within the empire. Those who sought to defraud the government were seen as enemies of the state, threatening the stability that kept the vast empire running. Such ruthless measures ensured the flow of necessary resources to maintain Ottoman dominance, and any betrayal in this regard was met with swift, often lethal retribution. The ban on coffee. In one of the most bizarre laws of the Ottoman Empire, the consumption of coffee was temporarily banned under Sultan Murad IV in the 17th century. Coffee, which had become an integral part of Ottoman social and cultural life, faced the wrath of the Sultan, who saw it as a threat to both public order and his control over his subjects. Sultan Murad IV, known for his strict and authoritarian rule, imposed a total ban on the popular beverage in 1633, accompanied by severe punishments for anyone caught drinking it. The punishment for violating this law was harsh. Those caught drinking or even selling coffee were executed. The reasoning behind this ban was rooted in Murad IV's desire to maintain discipline within the empire. He believed that the coffee houses, which were thriving in cities like Istanbul, had become centers for rebellion, political unrest, and social gatherings that undermined his authority. Coffee houses were places where intellectuals, poets, and commoners alike gathered to discuss politics, philosophy, and even openly criticize the Sultan's reign. This, in the eyes of Murad IV, was dangerous and destabilizing. The ban on coffee was enforced with brutal efficiency. The Sultan's enforcers patrolled the streets, searching for coffee drinkers and sellers. Public executions were carried out to send a clear message. Any defiance of the Sultan's orders would be met with deadly consequences. Interestingly, while the ban was intended to preserve order, it only seemed to fuel the rebellious spirit it sought to suppress. Coffee houses soon became underground sanctuaries where people continued to drink coffee in secret. Despite the fear of execution, the allure of the forbidden beverage was too strong, and many Ottomans risked their lives for a taste of coffee. Sultan Murad IV, however, remained resolute, enforcing the ban until his death in 1640, after which the law was eventually lifted by his successor, Sultan Ibrahim. The price of false testimony. In the Ottoman Empire, the integrity of legal proceedings was a matter of great importance, and the punishment for false testimony was severe. The legal system relied heavily on the testimony of witnesses, as the empire did not always have the kind of forensic evidence we rely on today. False testimony could cause irreversible harm to an individual's life, especially in cases involving serious charges such as theft, murder, or treason. As such, giving false testimony was considered a serious offense and was met with harsh punishment to maintain the integrity of the judicial system. The penalty for giving false testimony was rooted in Islamic law, which greatly influenced the legal practices of the Ottoman Empire. According to the principles of Sharia, perjury, or lying under oath was considered a grave sin. False witnesses could be subjected to physical punishments, such as flogging or imprisonment, depending on the severity of the offense. Ebasuid Effendi, one of the most prominent Ottoman jurists, did not specifically comment on perjury in his legal writings, but his work focused heavily on the importance of justice and truth, with the understanding that false testimony was a serious threat to the fairness of the legal process. In cases where false testimony led to severe consequences, such as a wrongful conviction or the death of an innocent person, the punishment could be even more severe. Some sources indicate that those found guilty of providing false testimony could face execution, particularly if their lies had led to a grave miscarriage of justice. The Ottoman Empire's legal system was an unyielding force, designed to protect its fragile balance of power and maintain the integrity of its society. From the Sultan's unquestionable authority to the terrifying consequences of dishonesty, these laws show us the empire's deep commitment to control, respect, and order. It was a time when the slightest infraction could lead to unimaginable punishments, reflecting a society where every action had its price. Conclusion: the laws of the Ottoman Empire, while seemingly bizarre and cruel by modern standards, were deeply embedded in a system designed to maintain control, order, and stability within the empire. The Sultan's absolute power, the ruthless punishment for tax evasion, the ban on coffee, and the brutal consequences for false testimony all reflect the empire's commitment to its dominance and societal hierarchy. These laws, some shocking and extreme, serve to reinforce the authority of the Sultan and preserve the empire's power structure, often at the expense of individual freedoms and rights. What do you think was the most shocking punishment? Was it the Sultan's power to execute at will, or the ruthless penalties for false witnesses? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, so you never miss an eye-opening journey through history. Remember, in the world of the Ottomans, every law carried weight, a weight that could never be ignored.